I guess today I wanted to, I guess, I don't know, over the summer I gave a lot of thought to this and I've had, I think, good success implementing it this year. But fitness tests, designing them, like understanding the point of them, designing them in putting them into play, and then and then warm-ups as a means of improving fitness test scores without becoming overly specialized. So with that, I'm mostly curious to know what you guys have done, what you all are doing, your thoughts on the matter, if you're looking to revise, to change. I guess what sort of fitness test do y'all employ and why? We can leave state standards out unless they're useful. They might be.
So we do the fitness gram. That's part of the state standards, but and we've talked before about how I have my kids have like workout journals, and so I try to have tests that we do throughout the year that they're documenting. I also steal some just standard like military tests, which is tricky because everyone has a different test, like slightly varied in how it's done. But that's a good way of finding just like very standard, basic tests that you can measure. So I do that. When it comes to the state standard tests, I get really frustrated, and I've spent some time thinking about how we can motivate the kids to want to do well on those, because even if there's like a handful of kids in each class who think it's hilarious to get a 0 or think it's funny that they can't be forced to try hard, then the whole exercise is pretty worthless. It's a giant waste of time and the numbers are meaningless. So that's the big hurdle, I think, is you have to have a culture of effort and you have to have a culture of taking it seriously. And if that culture is not established, then you're going to have to find some sort of outside incentive to make that work. And so far, our culture has been good enough that it hasn't been a huge problem. But I just know that it gets frustrating as a teacher who's spending a week or whatever doing these tests with all these kids, and I get frustrated with students who are goofing around and whatever else students are doing. So
yeah.
So you have a fitness test of your own to go along. Like I guess maybe you don't do it at the beginning. So you have your own test, but you don't do it at the beginning and the end of the year. You do the fitness gram as you're told you have to.
Yes, and I do elements of the fitness gram throughout the year that hopefully makes them do better on the fitness gram on the formal test. And I do also, depending on the class, like in our class where we lift weights, I have them do, it's almost like a combine at the beginning of the year, which some of them get really into and some of them don't, but they all have numbers. And so the idea is, our goal in that class is to become more athletic, more explosive, very gifted, agile, that sort of thing. So we test those sorts of things. So I actually test at the beginning of the year in that class. We test vertical jump and broad jump and 40-yard dash, and we do a 3-cone drill, and we do a couple others, 3-cone drill, and well, there's a couple other ones that I've just like looked as things that are standardized, pretty simple to set up, and ones, especially ones that the kids would recognize. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen that, or I know that, or I can now compare my time to this time or whatever. And so we just do it at the beginning of the year, and then we lift weights all year, and then we do it at the end. And so some of them are motivated by that, or see improvement, or just like to compete with each other.
So everybody watches Combine, so I can understand how easy it is to get into that.
Yeah, the Combine, the boys definitely are into it, and I have to give them this whole speech on like, okay, this is hand timed. We're like out in a field, like you're not wearing spikes and you haven't been trained to do this. So it's really mainly valuable if our setting is exactly the same at the end of the year. That's what we're looking for. It's an improvement there. And even then you might not see it because maybe you're already in really good shape and it's not going to show up. So you have to really frame it the right way. But that does fall under the broader category of tests that I give in PE for fitness measurements.
Yeah. So a good motivator, it seems, for some. I've been unsure about the FitnessGram. Do you think it's actually a good test? You mentioned that you're frustrated with it. Does it measure the whole athleticism of a student?
Are you asking Nathan?
Anybody, yeah.
You can lead it off if you want.
I don't know. It says my internet connection isn't great here at school. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can. Your
Oh.
video froze up last time, but I think we heard you okay.
I mean, the FitnessGram I use, I think the kids love the pacer test. The curl up test is really tricky to get accurate results on because it's subjective. I'm trying to train the kids' eye. And I don't know if all the Hillsdale charter schools are like this. We have kids, like literally I have 3 to 5 kids in my class who have had PE before. And these kids, some of them are thin, but they are in the worst physical condition I've ever seen kids in, which is great because it makes me appreciate how much they need PE. But I mean, like just training, like none of them can do push up, they can do sit up. And so they've improved so much, but I was like, wow. So the curl up, I mean, like Nathan says, like the results are only as good as the intent, the effort, but also the technique that the kids are kind of in. I see kids, I test them, I'm making them record like sit-ups, like just for 60 seconds for a gag, once a week because they do the mile run, just see how many sit-ups, how many push-ups, and that's probably over sampling them, over testing them, but I'm trying to train them to record accurate data because I see some kids and the push-up I wouldn't count and they write like 47 on their slip. And I'm like, no, you know what I mean? So it's just like trying to be supportive, but not destroy their ego. And
Right.
So, but the FitnessGram, they really like the pacer test. The mile once a week is not super popular with them. So I record their times, I give them little sheets, which are like this.
Are you doing the mile
Initially-
for K2, K4, or just the older
No,
kids?
for they're not in good enough shape. I try to give them a couple weeks base. We didn't start it until like 2 weeks ago. I had them start running the field, but then again, depending on weather, they either run like 44 times around the gym or 3 times around the field or 5 times around the parking lot. And I'm like, it's not going to be precise. Just get your best parking lot time, your best field time, your best, you know what I mean? When it depends on the weather and what's going on. But I tried giving them a form so like they could see their gains. But by the time you pass back the papers out in the class of 5th, I'm like, scrap that. We're just going to do this. And I record it on a spreadsheet. And then I'll give them like cumulative gains, whatever, like quarterly or whatever. But I do like the FitnessGram, the push-up test, the cadence. I think it's good. It trains them. We'll see what the results yield at the end of the year. But I agree with you. Like some of those kids, you're like, okay, we got to be at 40 laps. But some of them are like 5 and they're like, I'm out. And for us, for the state, we also have to report on, like, I don't know about you, but I have to, for the state of Ohio, I have to put in, locomotor skills, like hopping, skipping, jumping, all the kids, can they do? And it's like a checklist of all these skills for the lower grades. And then for the upper grades, we have like 5 content standards and we have to use a 3-point scale and I have to give them precise rankings and report all that to the state. So I just try to educate the kids on the criteria that I'm always assessing them on. Like when they do self-reflection, I'll pull something like this out and then the other side, it has the content standards. It has what they would give themselves, the score I would give them, and then their actual score that's awarded. And then it has like just reflection questions. I'm sure you guys do something very similar. And then the other thing is I give them a skills test because those are the things I have to report on. And I just do it out of like, I will say at the start of the year, I had like girls who could do 2 out of 20 catches and throws. And by the end, they're like up to 18. So they care a little bit more when you have the skills test. And then there's a whole formula that Ohio gives us, if they do it 70% of the time or more, you give them a 2.75 to a 3 for advanced rating. If they do it 50% of the time or more, give them a 2.74 to 1.75 for proficient. And then if it's less than 50% of the time, give them 1.740 to 1.74 to a 0 under the limited category. So I don't know if your states are similar, but that's kind of the framework I'm working from. I don't know if that answers your
It seems a
question.
lot more detailed than anything I've had to do. Nathan, same goes for you.
I haven't seen that before. I really like the idea of anything you can measure is going to make them care more about improvement. Now, you don't want to do like extraneous stuff that just makes more work for you, especially if it's not going to matter, be accurate large scale, but something like measuring how many times someone can catch a ball 20 times at the start of the year and then being like, look, now you're better. Like that stuff's great. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of all of those measurements before. We don't have to do that.
Ohio, it's really bizarre. I think they tried to make us report to the state because you have all these kids getting easy A's and like Americans in the worst physical condition historically with obesity and sedentary lifestyles. So I think they're just trying to put a little more teeth into physical education and making it more like an academic class.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's really hard to hold kids accountable when it's effort based.
It's a super weird thing because like you say, the behavior, you have some kids with the behavior and then it's like you want to give the kid that worked hard, but then when you get a kid who's like morbidly obese and they're trying, but their skill level is actually limited, I feel like it would destroy them to give them that score. You know what I mean? So I give them a participation grade and then I give them the content standard score and it kind of like meshes. So they're sitting at like an A or a B. And then the kids who are like behavioral, no effort, whatever, they get a C. And then my kids who did nothing who for online, they failed. So how do you guys handle grades and stuff?
So yeah. Well, I was going to say, we don't necessarily have a grade associated with their time. So we basically ask our teachers to have an idea of what students are capable of and grade them off of that. So if they are clearly dogging it, they might get points taken off or not get an A, and that's part of their grade. I have recently become kind of interested in the idea of heart monitors as a measure of effort. I don't know how close we are to having that at many schools, but it seems like that would solve a lot of problems and make the kids more aware of how hard they're working and what that means and all that sort of thing. So that's part of it.
How much do those cost, Nate?
So I have seen a lot of the spectrum, and I haven't got to the point of like deciding a price point that we could do it at, because there's so many other things that we're still trying to get for our PE class. And even if we did, like there'd be all these problems with right now with so one, we don't have storage at our school. Any equipment that we're looking at getting, that's my first question, is like, where am I going to put this? And then now with our restrictions on sharing things or touching things or cleaning things, it's just
right
on my immediate radar. So I don't have a number for that. I think I've seen a lot of schools that have gotten heart rate monitors for their whole classes, and I think it's not that out of the question in the long run, or even in the medium run, next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's also in that Spark book. I've thought about the same, because there was that great line in there about the little girl whom the PE coach saw. She was finishing and he thought she wasn't trying, but he saw her heart rate. It's like, oh golly, you are. You're working right now.
Yeah.
And that's not always evident to the coach's eye. So yeah, I guess maybe because I'm working in a small private school, we we don't have a required fitness test. So I kind of worked with the athletic director this past year. We kind of created our own. From the Fitnessgram, we borrowed. Do they do a dead hang with a fitness test?
We don't have that equipment, but I think the pull up and I think the dead hang might be in there. You can choose,
Okay.
I think.
Because parts are kind of inspired by Fitnessgram. We do a sit and reach from them as well. I wish, yeah, the pacer sounds fascinating. For now, we still just do a distance run, quarter mile for kindergarten, half mile for first and second, 3/4 mile for third and fourth, and then they begin doing the miles in 5th grade. But I thought these were pretty cool. One of these, a Superman test where they have to hold a flexed Superman position for 20 seconds or even 30 seconds for some of the older kids. I did that because I guess that's another way of measuring core strength, except it's one which Athena Oden from that Ready Bodies Learning Minds program, she thinks very highly of. I've never met a chiropractor who doesn't think a Superman isn't just the best core exercise. So we do that one. And I added bear crawl, where I have the kids bear crawl 30, 40, or 50 yards. It's not a race. It's just a matter of getting it done to see if they
Right.
have the shoulder strength. Because last year I was dismayed at how few students could bear crawl or crab walk in a circle. So I said, well, we're gonna change that. And to my own surprise, they did really well this year on that section. It's the first time that I've done it. But we also began the year right away. Every single day in the warm-ups, we included some bear crawling. So I think they just got a little more used to feeling impact on their shoulders, supporting their body weight. And everyone passed except for the kindergartners, who probably had the least practice. Well, I guess most recent practice they probably had, but in terms of PE class, they haven't had that very recently. So why do y'all like the pacer? I guess a part of me immediately prefers that as well. But like, do you prefer the pacer to a distance run if you had your option there?
I think the kids like it more. I feel like it's shorter goals. So if you do the 20 meters, like, and the kids are in there, and then when kids fail out, they can see the results. They know how they're doing. They're like, okay, this kid had 2 hours, this kid, I'm still in the running. And then the kids, it's like, it's indoor. So the kids are like clapping and supporting them. And so it encourages them to keep going. And then I put school record holders up. So just to give out, I'm sure it'll fluctuate, but just to start the trend of like, hey, for the kids who care, if they can't shine in the pacer, then maybe they just shine in the push-ups, or they can shine in the curl-ups or the flexibility test. And there was the first time these kids, I think, have had to do this. These kids had like the flex. It took me so long to do the sit and reach, and they were surprised finding like they had more flexibility on one side or the other. But the pacer was by far. They're like, can we do that again? I think they like the cadence. I think they like the immediate feedback. They know how they're doing compared to their peers. And like, how many did you get? I got 24. I got 40. I got 80. I got or whatever. So.
That's really interesting. I do like the pacer, and with the older kids, they definitely aren't excited about it, but they do generally accept it more than the mile. There's definitely pros and cons to each of them, and I actually have a couple. So we have a distance day every week, but I have 4 or 5 things that I do. The other ones are less measurable than the pacer or the mile, but the downside of the pacer is that kids can drop out whenever they want, as opposed to the mile, which says like you have to do this much. So I've done a couple things with them where like I'll start the year, and I never answer their questions when they ask me like what's good for my age or what's the standard, what's failing. Like I'll never tell them that, because most of the time we're way better than the like standard. And I don't want them to feel like that's good enough, because I want them to keep pushing themselves and be as good as they can, not whatever the state minimum is. But I will do things like take like the average of the class and break them into half and say, okay, we're going to do 2 rounds. This is the upper half. This is the lower half. Or I'll do a rule where you can drop out, but if you drop out before like number 40, you have to do that many burpees, right? So if you drop out at 20, that's fine, but you have to do 20 burpees. Your total number has to equal at least 40. or you can drop out and catch your breath, and then you have to hop back in and do another, 15 or whatever, so that you've done this many minimum. So I do that to make sure that, if there are students who are just being like, yeah, I feel slightly winded and I'm now done for the day. Giving them something to do once they drop out, and understanding that there's a huge time difference between kids who are running 80, 90, 100 and someone who's running 15, and making sure those kids are doing something after they drop out. That's all part of like doing the pacer test well, I would say.
Yeah. Do you have to buy equipment for the FitnessGram, or can you get some of that stuff? Is there like a YouTube recording of the pacer tests, the tempo?
Yeah, there is. There's
Okay.
YouTube stuff. Some of them are actually too popular now, to the degree that they have ads in them, and you need to find one that doesn't stop with ads in the middle.
Right.
And there are some things that we've bought or like made by hand. Like there's measurements. I agree that the curl ups one is the worst, because kids who have like long arms can basically just shrug their shoulders and it counts as a curl up. It's really frustrating to try to enforce that curl up. I don't know why they do it the way they do it for the FitnessGram. But yeah, most of it's pretty affordable and cheap.
Did you buy, see, I looked at some of the old versions because I ordered the old version and then I ordered the more current version that is actually in print. And some of the information is different than when I taught PE like a long time ago. And, but do you do the software? Do you input all their stuff into the software and print out the reports for the kids?
So ours is kind of this top down. We get sent stuff from Responsive Ed, who gives us a spreadsheet with all the information, and our job's just to fill out the spreadsheets.
What is Responsive Ed?
So that's like the parent company for our network of schools in Texas. So they are sending us the spreadsheets and saying, this is what you need to do, because
Gotcha.
FitnessGram, there's like, you need to do one of these tests, you need to do 2 out of this group. Like there's different ones that you can choose. And so they just tell us what we need to do. So we haven't had to purchase things separately or print out.
No. I wanted to buy a Sit and Reach, but then my budget was reduced. So I just jerry-rigged a box that was tall and taped the ruler up to like the 9-inch mark. And then I had like 4 kids test at a time, but it was not ideal. But I mean, compared to like $70, times over many. And again, I bought a bunch of equipment. We're in our 2nd year, so I ordered and inventoried a lot of equipment, but I try to prioritize, I use this twice a year. I could jerry rig this, or do I want like hockey equipment for, 50 or 40 kids? You know what I mean? Times whatever. But so that's interesting. So you do, how about national competitions? I think you said, Nate, in your presentation, you guys do like the national jump roping thing. Can you talk to me about that?
We haven't done that. So if someone said that, it wasn't me, but I did incorporate jump roping quite a bit as something that I think is a good measurable skill and requires not just coordination, but it's a great warm up. And there's a lot of like levels that you can get to it to keep yourself entertained or keep pushing your limits. So yeah, if there's someone doing national jump roping competitions, I'm curious to hear about that too, but we haven't done that. One standard thing that I do with my groups is they'll have a warm up and they'll have different things to do during their warm up. And one of them that I had them record in their notebooks every Friday was they count how many jump ropes they can get in 60 seconds. My office. And for kids who grew up jump roping or that's normal to them, like that's just standard. But there are kids who can't do it. Like they just even get 1 at the start of the year, and then by the end they're doing like 100 or something. And
that's really good.
Do you guys, I know, Anastasia, this is your first year as a PE teacher there. Do you see improvement in the students over the course of the year? Or another way of phrasing it, perhaps more practically, what are you doing to improve those scores? I guess, so my presumption is that the test you use, so Nathan, you mentioned that you kind of have little addendums to your FitnessGram, things which you think are more, I guess perhaps better measurements of their athletic ability. What are you doing over the course of the year to, I guess, improve the athletic ability in a very intentional way, so that I guess you'll be able to measure again at the end of the year, the student's ability? The answer that goes to you too, even though I mean, like, I guess,
you're
what are you
fine.
employing right now?
I mean, I have seen in the first quarter tremendous improvement. I mean, it was like nothing I've seen in 15 years. So they're improving. So basically my goal is just discipline and structure in the very beginning, to be very regimented. I try to do for K through 2, like Mondays, I try to do the motor lab, and I'm slowly trying to build that. Tuesdays, we generally do locomotive skills or locomotor skills, like, you know, actually, yes. So first quarter, we didn't do the motor lab. Second quarter, I started the motor lab, but before we always did like bear crawl, bunny hop, kangaroo hop, crab walk, just different animal movements. Then Tuesdays, I always did, just non-locomotor skills like twist, turn, directionality, just different things, direction words, and I always put an emphasis on direction word, are your feet behind the white line, or things like that. And then Wednesdays were always manipulative skills. I bought a bunch of laundry baskets from the dollar store because they're easy to store. And it just keeps the ball in place. And I just set up these stations, and I set the kids up anywhere from 7 to 10 feet apart. And we practice rolling the ball. We practice the V and the W catch. Then we do overhand throws. And the kids really like when you get the laundry basket and trying to catch it. And that I always lead up to that. But those are like super cheap. They're like $1, and they're just an easy, fun way to something new. And I always mix up the balls. So I try to start with larger balls in the beginning of the year, and then I work towards a smaller ball because it requires a little more coordination. And then we talk about force, like if it's like a dodgeball, or if it's like a little cheap plastic ball from the dollar store, if it's like a tennis ball, or not a hard softball, but a foam softball. You know what I mean? Like, do you have to throw it more force or less force? And don't close your eyes. It's just stuff like that. So then Thursday, we do a review of all of the locomotor, non-locomotor skills. And Friday is usually a Friday fun day. And then K through 2, every day, in accompaniment to the explicit instruction of the things I just mentioned, we always play a different type of tag game. So just getting them running around as much as I can. But they also start out with like warm-ups, flexibility. We'll do big arm circles, baby arm circles, and I do the voices and all those things. And then we do windmills and running in place, and just, different things. And then for the upper grades, I try to add 2 reps every 2 weeks of whatever we're doing to warm up. So we're starting pretty first quarter. It was like, I wish I had my lesson plans here. Like we do for warm-ups, I do 3 to 5 minutes of just random activities, side hops, jumping jacks, stuff of that nature. Then flexibility, I just took 10 primary flexibility movements, and we break them up. We do 2 each day, and call them by their names, and just focus on like different benefits of flexing or stretching. And then I try to coordinate them with soccer, maybe add it, or whatever the sport is. And then maybe add specific, like ankle stretches if we're doing soccer, or do, just smaller specific stretches for that specific unit. And then, what's it called? Then we do strength exercises. So for push-ups, we'll do like push-up, alternate. We'll do push-ups, planks, Supermans, and different things of that nature. But for the abs, I mix up the abs a lot. So we do all the way ups where they cross their arms and have to go up and somebody holds their feet. We do like ankle grabber leg lifts where people stand behind them. They have to put their feet here, and then they can't let their feet hit to the floor. And then we'll do leg lifts where they cushion their own bottom and try to lift between 12 and 24 inches. We do Russian twists. We do V-ups. I only make them do about 5 V-ups, and those are hard for them, but they like them. And but I try to increase, not the V-ups. I don't increase the reps in the V-ups, but I try to increase 2 by every 2 weeks or so. But if it's getting hard for them, I'll kind of stay there for maybe another week or 2. And then running, I alternate running direction around the basketball court lines, sometimes outside around the field. And I just try to be cognizant of increasing the distance a little bit more. As the weather gets colder, that's going to be a challenge. And we run at different speeds, different paces. And then we do more sports, like the thematic units for grades like 3 through 8 right now. So, but right now we're taking a break and doing a dance unit. So,
Nice.
but yeah, I don't know if that's what you want, but yeah.
That's great. That's just like a whole variety of movements. That's awesome.
Well, they're kind of getting bored with the all the way ups, and it's really hard on their spine on the gym floor, and we don't put out mats. You know what I mean? It's just too much to do when you're trying to just get to the activity and you have the numbers. Like I don't have enough mats for 50 kids to lay down at one time. So I'm just trying to mix it up. And then the first quarter, though, we did a lot of all the way ups because, like I said, a lot of them couldn't do sit-ups without cheating and using their elbow, but they have improved a lot in the push-ups and the sit-ups for sure. The running is challenging. Do you guys make kids run when you know they're quitting? I usually say, okay, take 10 seconds rest, walk it off, and then start to jog again. What is your go-to for the kids that just opt out? They're like, I'm not running.
Yeah, they got to finish.
So you say, do you, I mean, do you just say, okay, you can walk or run? Because technically it's the walk or run mile, right? But Hillsdale says run, you have to run a mile, right? Because the state says you can walk or run a mile between 9 and 12 minutes.
Uh-huh. I mean, I don't know what Hillsdale says. I do.
Whatever.
Sorry, BSI, I don't think we prescribe necessarily that all the kids have to be running these things. I think that's better for them. Something which I've been working with my students on recently is pacing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so you like instead of running, walking, what if we found a slower pace, but a regular cadence that we could finish the whole thing in? And that was I don't know, it was an idea I borrowed from Coach Lumberg here, who did a celebrity appearance at one of our PE classes, and I thought that was a great idea. That's another way of help. You know, they're somewhat conscious of their pace. This is my 3rd and 4th grade class, and they know well enough not to take off sprinting when they're running 3 laps around, but
Right.
they might not know what their actual pace is if they want to keep a steady rhythm.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one approach. Yeah, I've in the past let them walk when they get tired and demand that they do at least finish their distance. But I think this is a neater or a better way of going about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one approach. I think it depends each situation, each kid, and ideally you work with them over a long period of time and it's like an ongoing conversation where they're learning, and ultimately, like, our goal in PE is to develop intrinsically motivated, like self-motivated kids. So I try to avoid being, the teacher who's screaming run faster at the group of kids as they walk by, because even if that does motivate them in that period of time, I don't think when I'm not there, it's not going to matter. So
Right.
Having conversations. So one, I think, things that you've already said about making it competitive and having times where they're comparing, not even against everyone else, but even against their previous time. Like,
Right.
that's good. Talking to them about, like, hey, just if you need to take a break, that's okay, but try to take a shorter break than last time, or that sort of thing. So, and then, but ultimately, yes, I mean, I do. And again, this is going to vary student by student, grade by grade, but I do tell kids, hey, I think you can do better. Or, if you've got the classic like group who wants to walk together, sometimes I'll make rules and say, like, you guys can't be together. Like, you can walk if you want, but you're going to have to walk, this far apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think just trying to get a feel for each situation as it comes along, and then trying to figure out what they need to be motivated. Also having conversations with them about just being able to tell the difference between types of pain is something that I think is important in PE, especially when it comes to the mile, because a lot of them think like I'm in pain, I should stop. Like, so they don't have any like awareness of good pain versus bad pain, or like lasting pain versus, because you could feel like you're gonna collapse, and then you finish the mile, and then 2 minutes later you're like, yeah, I could do that again. So like that sort of pain is very different than I pulled my hamstring or something. So just talking to them about pain and what it means, and not all pain is bad pain. In fact, some of it's good, and in fact, you should be feeling some strain if you're wanting to get better. If you're wanting to run it faster the next time, you have to push your limits this time. That sort of thing. It's just, I try to have those conversations, make sure they understand those things. There's a lot of angles you could approach it from, and each angle might connect with 10-15% of the class, and so you keep cycling through.
Cool.
Sounds like a blog post in the making. Types of pain.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm coaching cross country for the first time this year, or this season is my first cross country season I've ever coached, and it's been a lot of fun because that's it. It's all just trying to motivate kids to work a little bit harder. I mean, there's some strategy in terms of pacing and that sort of thing, but the basic job of the middle school cross country coach is getting them to push their limits.
You got to be born to run, man. That's exactly what that's about. You'd be a better coach. He talks about some of the greatest track coaches, which was really cool.
I put it on my list. I've got. Oh, I got something.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, and you guys are both keeping track of how your kids are progressing over the course of the year, so that's good. Well, that's basically a conversation I wanted to have about warm-ups and fitness, and fitness tests. You guys have already both heard my spiel about the beginning of class every single time having a 5 to 10 minute workout, which is going to be really intentional. That's going great with us right now. The kids, especially with the K1 and 2 group, is what it is. The 3rd and 4th graders are getting into it, and I think they're appreciating that they're getting better at it as well, because I refuse to let up or change it for the time being. So other things on your mind? I know, Anastasia, this is your first year. I know you've taught before, but it's but you're back in the grind. How are things going down in Noka?
It's going great. We're super busy. We're in our 2nd year, but we doubled our staff, and our enrollment went up significantly. So, we're just plugging along, and all of us are very busy. So I apologize that I missed the last meeting because I totally forgot. And
we're glad you're here this time.
Yes, thank you. But no, I appreciate the ability to speak with you guys and kind of hear how you guys are doing things. And but it's going well. We're having fun. I'm excited to progress the curriculum. Yeah, I mean, the kids are improving. They are improving for sure. Like the first couple weeks, it was just like consistency, just this is how we do school. This is how we line up. This is how we sit down. We don't lay down on the floor. This is how so all of those things, I think for the most part are progressing nicely for the majority of the students. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
Are there any topics that you think would be worth addressing at a future meeting of this nature?
I was super interested when I recorded, or I watched the recording from your guys' first meeting, just the diversity of everybody's COVID requirements. I feel very blessed. Like, in Ohio, we're just kind of like a lot more lax, I think, in some respects. So, and we have mostly normal PE class. I just try not to have them hold hands, but they're all hugging and loving each other anyways. And then when we do the pair ups for the sit-ups and stuff, I'm like, stand on their feet, don't like crouch down and be in their breathing space, stand, say there's like 2 or 3 feet of distance. And so that was really interesting. I don't know if you guys, I liked how everybody brought a game to share when we did the thing at BCSI. I'm always looking for like new great resources.
Okay. So maybe do a game exchange virtually. That wouldn't be quite as
super cool.
Fun. Perhaps we wouldn't get to play them, but That's a thought. I'm actually creating a games bank. My intent is to like for like 'cause most schools still operate on sports units over the course of the year. You know, not necessarily doing sports all year, but you know, you have these sports units.
Right.
And I've just found that the K2 crowd, you really need to use a lot of modified games. So I'm just creating a master list of my own. So like, here's soccer. Here are the basic rules that you need to tell your kids if you're going to play a soccer game. Here are games related to soccer, and just doing searches online and some things which I learned over the summer as well. And I thought maybe of inviting everybody to send me the best modified games, the best games that they have, and then we could just make that a games bank thing on the box, which people could tap into. I mean, I know there are many resources like that out there already, but I suppose that my creative juices get flowing when I begin reading other people's ideas, and I think the best modified soccer game that we play is one which I came up with. So
Yeah, I think
it's a great idea. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good idea. And even though there are a lot of resources out there, it's a pretty low like hit rate in my opinion, from things that I've read about to things that I think are worth trying to things that have succeeded. So if we have like recommendations from a group of people that we trust, I think that's worthwhile. The other thing that I was going to say is if if you're willing to test or confront how many teachers are actually starting their classes with 5 to 10 minute workouts, that I would be interested in seeing what they're doing. I think that'd be useful in comparing notes.
yeah, so when they show up, we can ask.
Yeah.
I think most of the folks who have been on these calls so far, they've been primarily from new schools. I think they've been employing something related to it. So, okay. Well, good. Well, glad you all chimed in. We'll meet up again, I think, in November. Hopefully we can all make it again. I'll be here.
I have it on my calendar.
Awesome.
I have it on my calendar, and it's exactly during my basketball practice.
Well, that's right. You mentioned that you wouldn't be making. Actually, I might have basketball practice. My season's kicking up here pretty soon too. But we'll find a way to make it work.
I think the next one's at 5:30, I think.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
For our friends out west.
Is that why it's at 5:30? I'm like, that's why I forgot. It's not at 3:30.
Yeah.
So good. That makes sense. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
it's good to see you.
Take care.
Still recording, huh? Well, that's fun.